This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
You're here celebrating episode number 200 of the Practical Prayer Podcast. So congratulations to the both of us, and let's blow out some candles.
I try.
The fire alarms go off and so forth.
I thought about stuff like that. I thought about cake. Wait a minute, you don't bake anything. So, and
wait a second, you don't bake anything.
What are you doing? The only place I could think of was it gets up I can't even imagine supermarket cake. And the other thing is Starbucks. And listen, let's just get a grip on yourself, Carol. This is online.
Okay. All right.
So
this is online. This is, happy birthday. Here we go. And you did not tell me what we're going to be talking about today. So I know that it's going to be intriguing and uplifting and exciting because it always is. But now you're going to tell me what it is or just ask me a question.
It's one word. And we can turn it into a question, but it's one word. It's expansion.
Expansion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I wanted to find a subject that was really kind of special for the 200th episode. And I thought, well, is this going to be exciting for everybody or just whatever? So I went through all of this. And this word, I kept
so you overthought it.
I was being open. Really, I was being open because I always have the audience that I actually don't know in mind. Like, I don't know who's listening, which is really cool because it's just cool. We could talk about that too. But I always have the other side in mind that I can't see, and what can I talk about or suggest that we talk about that will be fruitful, interesting, uplifting to those whom I can't see and have no clue as to who they are. And that's what makes it exciting for me, because whatever comes to me, I believe that it is a divine download for those that are listening. And since I don't have to come up with the answers,
Pin it on Bill.
You do. It's always exciting. So expansion came to me because in our spiritual growth, the word expanding means something different to me than growth. It's
okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the idea that I wanted to share. You know, we are everything in the universe is expanding. Mm-hmm. And when you bring it down to where we are, the little tiny human being, you know, in the midst of all of this grandeur, we are also expanding. And what does that look like, feel like? You know, what does that really mean? Because when you think about ourselves, juxtaposed to the universe, we just kind of disappear. You know, you can.
Well, from my perspective, I don't, but everything else seems to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, well, everything, yeah. I mean, because if you're, you know, I'm thinking about science class, and when I would look at where the Earth that I thought was this big deal, really wasn't quite a big deal at all, you know, in respect to the larger narrative. So when you look at the person, you think, oh, well, I'm not really, do I matter? Of course, because we are defined, everything evolves the same way. It's one spirit, I think that you say it all the time. You said one infinite creative power that creates everything, you and me and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that means we're all moving to a certain set of rhythm that is relevant to us, a certain set of truths. And so if the universe is expanding, then so must I be expanding. And how does that look? What's that feel like? I want to recognize that and acknowledge that. Yeah.
Well, you have once again come up with an intriguing way of prompting the return to the fundamentals. Because in practical prayer, we kind of have this short list of things that you pray for, and everything kind of fits into those 5 categories, which we, the shortcut description is health, wealth, love, work, and spirit. Health is everything about our physical vitality, comfort, the way that our bodies are working. Wealth is all about our prosperity, our financial affairs, and also having adequacy and enoughness. You have somebody with tons of money, but they don't have a dry place to sleep. Suddenly the money becomes much less relevant than, the prosperity that shows up as having enough space to shelter the family. Love is all about relationships, whether it's our, one-on-one committed relationship or our family or our neighbors or our colleagues or whatever. Work is about creativity, the way that we are sharing the gifts that we have with the world and bringing ourselves into creative expression. And work is different than prosperity because people think, I got to get a job because that means money. But they're not connected. There are people who are doing wonderful work in the world, don't get paid for it, but they're being supported. Think Gandhi, Mother Teresa, who didn't need to make any money, but they were completely well taken care of. And the last one is the slippery one, is spirit. Because I think, my prayer is to be more spiritual. And that's a wrong answer. Mm-hmm. You cannot be any more spiritual than you are, because if it's one infinite creative universe, everything is 100% spirit. So that's all we are. That's all anybody can be. And to pray to be more spirit is like water praying to be more watery. It's just not going to happen. However, the reason that it's on the list is because there are times that we forget. There are times we lose the awareness of our connection with the one, that we forget that we're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience. And so the prayer for spirituality is to be more aware of and more connected to our spirituality. And I think that's what expansion is when you start talking about it.
Yeah, it does. I think, as you were saying that, I was thinking that it is because of those things that you're saying that I could be, and maybe when I say this, be more expansive in my view of possibilities, more expansive in what I can see as possible. And that means that, and oh goodness, I don't want to, I may not have the right words, but I'll just say it this way. I can be more. And that's not quite what I mean, but it'll do for now. It'll do. I'm expanding my perception of possibilities. And then I grow, or I see myself as, I can do that. I can do that. But I need to be a little more. Be a little sharper, need to know a little more. But I could do that too. So without expanding our view of what's possible, we don't grow. I think, does that make sense? Jabaz, that prayer of Jabaz, it was about expanding my territory. That was physical territory, land and all of that. But for us, from a spiritual perspective, expanding my territory really is expanding my spiritual view of possibilities.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's big, I think. It's big because it's...
Yeah, and that's the tricky one, because it's, as we expand our awareness of what the infinite can do, the infinite is infinite. The limitation is always in what we think is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good starting point. The limitations is what we think is possible. So what do we think is possible? To me, it all you go back to what is God? What is spirit? Spirit doesn't see limitations. There are no limitations. So can I see and think through that mind? Ernest Holmes says, God's mind is my mind now. So what is the God mind that I'm usually not thinking through? And I say, okay, okay, so God's mind is my mind now. What does God thought about growing and expanding? And what does expansion mean for me at this point in my life, in this point in my career? It's a good question to ask, because when you're 30, you take for granted that you can go this way, this way, this way. When you're not 30, the possibilities are still the same.
Right.
So it's a good thing to come to the question, what does expansion mean? And it means don't close off any possibilities, which is probably the normal thing to do.
And sometimes we close off possibilities just because we stop being enthusiastic about changing our minds about stuff all the time. And sometimes it's just beyond our imagination. How could that possibly be? I'm not paying any attention to that. This can't expand in this direction because it never has, and I'm just not putting any effort or energy into it. And you've reminded me of a great story that I was reminded of last week. And it has to do with the law of gravitation. Carol goes, uh-oh. So the law of gravitation was actually defined or discovered by Isaac Newton. And it was a while ago. It was like in the mid to late 1600s, 1687. He came up with the law of gravitation. And then people started testing stuff against it, like, did the planets follow this? And they would do observations. The astronomers would do observations, and the mathematicians would say, well, that's not exactly right, so there must be something else going on. And they embellished a little bit of their understanding. Oh, well, yeah, the planets are all pulling on the sun, but they're also pulling on each other, and that's why things don't seem like they're where they're supposed to be. And everything fit the math. Everything fit the math just fine. And that went on for like a couple hundred years. And then the astronomers, the guys with the telescopes, had been watching the planet Uranus. And Uranus takes a long time to go around the sun, take 84 years to go around the sun. So from the time that they started measuring where it was and keeping track of it until the time that it had finished a complete orbit, took a long time. And when they did that, then the astronomers had gotten enough data that the people with arithmetic, the mathematicians, could start looking at it. And there were a couple of different teams of mathematicians. There was one in Paris, Leverrier, and another guy in Cambridge in England, Adams. And they both started doing arithmetic. And they both realized that Uranus was not where it was supposed to be. It was not behaving according to the numbers. So there was something up with the math. And they both did their calculations, and they both simultaneously in 1845 came up with the same idea. There must be another planet. There must be another planet that's pulling on Uranus to make it come to look like it's in the wrong place. If that were where it's supposed to be, there would have to be a planet here that's about this size. And the British guy sent his findings off to the Royal Astronomy and the astronomers and said, look here for a planet. And the guy in France sent his calculations off to the Berlin Observatory, which is where they were doing their observations, said, look here for a planet. And the British guy said, I'm not going to take instructions from some guy who's sitting there in a windowless room with a piece of paper and a pencil. He's not going to tell me where to look. And the guy in Berlin said, okay, because he had, and tying back into what the story is about, expansion, he had a bigger idea of what was possible and discovered Neptune. And won the Copley Prize from the British Royal Academy.
So it served him right, the other guy. But anyway.
So right back to what you're talking about, expansion is being open to a bigger possibility than what we thought was going to be there. To say, okay, what if? Maybe it can. Let me be a channel through which that newness can be flowing. And I'm in partnership with something that's much bigger than me. Maybe there's a bigger idea going on. Maybe there's a bigger possibility at hand.
Yeah, it's two things. It's an exercise. It's something you do, connect, look expansively, or it's something that you are in turn or in your mind. Do you know? I always think of I peel back the layers like an onion. You know, when you give me something, anybody, and it just happens, and I'm peeling it back. What happened before that? What happened before that? And I'm not happy and I discover gold when I'm always digging. So I love it. But the other thing that I also love is thinking about possibilities. So it's sort of a state of being, a mindset. Everything is more, there's more than I can see. So my mindset is look for it. You know, look for the more, because if I can figure it out, God is kind of pathetic, you know. So automatically it's got to be more. And so why don't we go? Because like where we are right now is not hard to figure out. Let's just see what else there is. And that's to me, that's exciting, right?
There are so many ways to think about that. It's like if I can figure it out, well, then maybe God is slipping you the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe God's helping you cram for the exam.
Oh yes, absolutely. But I guess I'm sharing my trigger or my thought, you know, because there are. I still talk to people who see God out there as, you know, the happening. And so I'm always in the position of translating. So I'm understanding and translating. And so I do think sometimes, Carol, if you got this, okay, come on, that can't possibly be all it is, you know, because God is bigger than this. And then I immediately sit still and wait for the download, upload, whatever you want to call it, because it's all there. I really do believe it's all there. But without an attitude that embraces expansion, you'll never stretch or open yourself to receive a little bit more. Doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, it can only be as much as you're allowed to experience or expect or imagine, you know? So like I go for the gusto. then figure out how the heck is this, you know, like, Carol, what were you thinking? But yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break. And when we continue, we will talk about some more of the subtle details about what happens when we get into a mode of expansion.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer. I need some water.
Let's try that one more time.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
We're having a wonderful conversation about the topic of expansion and celebrating episode number 200 of the Practical Prayer Podcast. And I mentioned before the break about the law of gravitation, which was invented in the 1600s. And everything fit that formula. Every time the astronomers looked, it all fit the formula. And just rock solid. And they found new planets to accommodate because the numbers weren't coming out right. And eventually somebody came along and said, no, the formula is not quite right. We need to change the formula just a little bit. And normally you'd say, yeah, who's going to say that? But it was Albert Einstein, and he was right. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because there was anything wrong with the formula. It's just that there was some nuance that was going on that Einstein was paying attention to that needed to be accounted for so that the same law would continue to apply on the macro and the micro levels as well. So who am I to try and figure out God? Well, I don't know. I'm not Albert Einstein, but when he was little, he wasn't Albert Einstein either.
Right.
The sort of thing that you get to grow into.
That's right.
He didn't apply for a job as genius. He applied for a job as a patent clerk and worked his way up to genius. Because it turns out he was genius all the way along, and people just noticed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, expansion.
Expansion first is expanding your awareness or belief or faith or whatever, that there is more to it than this, more than I can see. But it's like, are you up for it? You know, what it might mean to see something a little bit bigger. And I think, well, you don't have to go for it, but I personally like to see what else there might be, so that because then the ideas start going and going and going. And I'll tell you, people look for peace a lot, and everything is right there. So the more you expand, the more you see, the more you become aware of. And peace is in that as well, because we don't always know what's disturbing our peace or preventing us from. It's like all the pieces work together. And when you accept that there are other pieces that might be operating in the universe, you look at those other pieces and then your peace comes. For example, I was for 30 years pastoring and increasingly was not at peace with what I was doing. Just not. And it was just getting more and more. Not that there was anything wrong with the church and all that business. It wasn't cool for me for so long. Mm-hmm. And when I began to accept that there are other possibilities and look, and there was a sense of peace that came over me that, okay, it wasn't that I had to be this, but to know that there were possibilities. And when I accepted that there were possibilities, then I had choices. And then the peace came with that. So it's being open to every part of what is in existence for us. You know, I'll leave it.
We're getting into springtime now. And you know, there are times when people, you know, they've got a lot of work to do. There's gardening, there's yard work, there's spring cleaning, there's this, there's that, there's that. And what they really want to do is go in the backyard and lie in the hammock. They got a hammock, it's in the backyard. They don't want to lie there for a few hours. But it feels like that's wasting time. That's not being productive. That's not making a good use of the resources that are available. And the thing to remember is that peace of mind is a choice. Just like relaxation is a choice. We get 1,440 minutes every day, and we're going to spend some of them asleep. And if we can spend a few more of them relaxing and not doing something else, and it brings us to a different place of balance and equilibrium, what a wonderful investment. Mm-hmm. So the expansion there is not, oh, I'm going to get more than 1,440 minutes. The expansion there is the realization that this is an investment. This is something that I can put my time and attention and energy into, and it's actually going to be of benefit, not necessarily in checking something off of the to-do list. But there's always something on the to-do list, you know?
Yeah. And while you were saying that, I'm thinking, okay, so now I got this garage he's talking about here. And I would love to just do something with that garage. And I was just thinking a couple of things. So what I really want to rest right now, I really want to get that thing straightened out. But it's in the rest, the pause, that allows, and it doesn't have to be like a conscious sacred pause where I'm praying or being spiritual, whatever that is, but it's just a stop. And then a new idea will come, or a new way to look at it will come, or even a piece that says, if you don't do it today, you get started tomorrow. And then, then that leaves space for possibilities and ideas, even about the job that's ahead of me. So it's, I guess what I'm hearing from you is giving ourselves time and permission for the expansion to happen, the conscious expansion to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the other hand is to not be as puffed up and full of ourselves to think that, oh, well, if I skip relaxing this afternoon, I'm going to be able to get all these things done. I'm going to be able to achieve all of my goals. Because I'll be honest, there's stuff that's on my to-do list. And I figured when the COVID lockdown started, now I'll have time to do them. And they're still on the to-do list. So even with many, many months, quote, off, still didn't get done.
Part of me said, don't say that. The other part was, oh, thank God I'm not the only one.
I don't think that, I think that's a relatively common occurrence. Here we thought, oh, well, everything's changed now. At least I can, get something different done. And it's like, be gentle with yourself. Yeah, maybe it did. There's a bunch of stuff that I got taken care of. I got my doctorate during that same time period. That was great. But there's other stuff that, be gentle with yourself. Sure, it's still on the to-do list. And that means that it's okay to go lie in the hammock for an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's better. The same thing goes with work. When you're working, this I find extraordinarily difficult to do, to take a rest because I have so many things that I really want to get done, and one depends on the other, and it just goes on and on. But I hit a roadblock where nothing is working. Nothing is just not working. And I know very well I can figure this out. Why can't I figure this out? And now something else has come into play, frustration. And, all of that. And then nothing is going to happen then. So I'll go do my walk and then come back and wonder, how did I miss this little point?
Wait, why was this a problem? Oh, wait, I didn't notice that. Yep.
Yeah. So expansion is always expanding in different ways. The idea that you can, listen, Carol, go take your walk. That's an expansion right there, because I'm willing to do something different. And then while I'm walking, I'm having a different expectation. You know what? I know it's working out. I know it's something in me that was screwing it up, or that I couldn't see it, or whatever. And it's going to work. You'll be okay. Just walk. And then I come back and there it is.
Yeah. There's a term we sometimes use about our small self. The ego self, the one that thinks that it knows all the answers. And we're trying to figure that stuff out on this very limited local level, even though we are complete masters of our local level. When we try and do something at the small self level, we're turning away from a huge amount of resource, knowledge, information, guidance that's available when we go for the expansion. It's counterintuitive, but we're really undermining ourselves.
Absolutely. And as you explained it, that is expansion itself, because it's choosing something that I normally would not choose. I choose to stay and dig it out till I figure it out. So it takes me all day to figure it out. Suppose I do, but look at the hours that I just I'm exhausted at the end of it, and nothing else happened.
Right.
So,
and I'm going to suggest that's what you chose to do instead of sitting in the hammock.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's, and my husband and I were talking about this, and he would, if he were listening, he would certainly appreciate this. It's responding or following the path that we were taught. We were taught, like, you do not rest until your work is done. And it's funny how he and I were taught the same things. We weren't raised in the same neighborhood or anything like that, but it's the whole idea that you have to keep on, and don't you go to sleep until you've done it, and don't you stop until it's finished. And it wasn't mean. It was just, this is how you do it. If I was in my house, you couldn't chill. You were not allowed to sit and watch television and chill during the day. That just wasn't happening. If you had time to sit and do that, you little friggin' genius, you'd be, you ought to be reading a book or writing something and whatever. And that's okay, because that's all I do.
Continue proofreading the dictionary, because you need something to do. Yep.
That's how I met Emerson when I was little. So, get a book. We live nowhere near a library. I can't even tell you when I first found a library, but neither here nor there. I had to choose from the books that were there. And so there was Emerson. So I have to undo that, because it's still there. And I meet with that, and I'll say, wait a minute, I want to expand beyond that reasoning, right? And say that if I rest, the ideas will come because they're already there. But it takes a bit. It takes some work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's take another break, and you've given me the great prompt for the prayer that we're going to do, which is on expanding to that infinite possibility. Here's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at bethelight.com. That's b-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at bethelight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
We've been having a wonderful conversation about expansion. And the prayer today is going to be about expansion. And the whole idea is that when we are looking at something from our individual perspective, from our humanness, from our what we describe as our small self, we can feel limited. The possibilities can feel limited, and we can be constrained by what we have perceived to be those external limitations. And in fact, that's not true. Expansion is our ability to expand our awareness of what's possible, to expand our awareness of what that creative power that's creating is. It seems to be whatever it is that we think of, whatever it is that we're doing, whatever action steps that we can take. When something needs to be done, I got to jump in and do it, or maybe I got to convince somebody else to do it, or urge them to do it. And that all works, and it works really well. And it works so well that we think that's all there is to it, that there's no other possibility of what can happen. And expansion is about opening to bigger possibilities. Expansion is about knowing that something greater than what we seem to be controlling ourselves is at work. And we've all had the experience where you think about somebody and then they call. Well, there's something bigger going on than that. And obviously you could have picked up the phone and dialed their number and left the voicemail and chased back and forth until you finally talked to them. Although the same process of setting the intention, expanding to the possibility of having that communication, and then letting it happen in the other direction. Because, by the way, when I'm thinking about somebody and they call, I'm not going to let it go to voicemail. I'm going to take the call. Wow, I was just thinking about you. And the communication happens. That same thing can happen all the time. So the prayer today is about expanding our awareness of what's possible, knowing that there is one infinite creative intelligence, one divine power and presence, one loving source that has been sharing itself, its energy, its substance, its intelligence, its limitless possibility since the very beginning of time. Whether the story is the one of the Big Bang, expanding and evolving into everything that exists, or in the beginning there was darkness and void and God said, "Let there be light," and that light continued to unfold and expand and reveal everything that exists everywhere. That one is all there is. So that one mind, that one power, that one love, that one limitless intelligence is all that we can be. There is nothing else out of which we could have been made. So all of the good that's available anywhere is available everywhere. And as we expand our awareness to the possibilities that surround us, as we expand our belief that things can happen in a way that goes beyond our ability to predict or control or define or explain, as we expand into the invitation, the awareness that that good is possible for us, we allow tremendous flexibility as the desired experience, the desired state, comes into being in the same mystical, magical, unpredictable way as somebody calling when we think about them. This is how love unfolds. This is that infinite creative possibility. This is the expansion that happens as we open ourselves up to those new possibilities. Because that infinite creative law that creates everything only has one answer. That answer is yes. Regardless of the intention or the invitation or the desire, as we let go of everything that we think is going to stand in the way of it, the answer is yes. And the good unfolds. And a lot of times after the fact, we can figure out, that's how that happened. But we need not figure it out ahead of time. We need not control all the circumstances. As we expand our awareness of that infinite creative power that creates everything that's creating each of us, the goodness unfolds naturally. And of course, it's different for each of us. We have a different starting point. We have different desires. But it's the same process unfolding for everyone listening to this prayer. Good and more good and more good, expanding in our lives to bring richness and sweetness and joy and delight and uplift in whatever way we describe it. So that's what I'm claiming on behalf of each of us. And I know without any question whatsoever that this is what's happening. And I am so, so grateful for it. Grateful for the good, grateful for the willingness, grateful for the awareness of the process. I'm grateful to be able to speak this word and let this invitation settle into that infinite creative power, knowing that it's already saying yes. So I speak this word, I let it go, and I know it's already active. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.